Tithe and Think Tank. There's 2 other books, and that's crossing over with Postal. So it's all of our characters. I guess I wish Matt were here to talk about it. I don't know where he's at right now, but we're gonna. That's gonna be really cool, and that's drawn by Attilio Rojo. So he's Italian, and his stuff is bananas good, and he does it all himself too. So it's like, hi Jen. So he's drawing it, he's coloring it all by himself. I thought I was super special because it's like, oh, I could pencil and make my own work. And then that guy comes in with the colors and he's like cheaper than me. I'm like, oh, great. Matt hilariously likes to joke, oh, he's way cheaper than you are, Isaac, and faster, so you better be careful. I'm like, that's a funny joke, Matt. So, but that's going to be 3 issues coming out in August, I believe, to coincide with our new arc with the Aryan Brotherhood that I was telling you guys about. And that one's going to be pretty cool because we've got a new colorist actually. So
beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful work. Thank you for saying so. Yeah, his name is K. Michael Russell, and he's been killing it. Actually, I was talking about the other stuff that I've been working on, and on one of those smaller projects, that's where I found him. So we worked together, and he made my stuff look several notches better than it was. He's just one of those guys, you know. And when you find a colorist like that, you keep him and you bring him along to every project that you can. So I kind of ushered him into the Postal. I introduced him to my editor, and that's how we got him involved. So it's going to be a very bright future for Postal, and by bright I mean very dark. It's a very dark comic. It's very, yeah, it's very serious, and but we got some really good stuff coming on. So how about you, Donovan? Are you a creator?
No, I'm working in engineering company.
Really? That's so cool though. So like you come here and, you know, somebody explained comics to me as one of those rare mediums where 90% of the fans are aspiring creators. So, you know, whenever I meet somebody, I just assume you're like a unicorn, that you're not. But we value those kinds of fans, man. No ulterior motives, we call them. Bill, you, not so much.
I write, but I have too much exposition for graphic.
Gotcha. What else are you guys reading?
It's been a while since I've had a chance to do much reading.
Yeah, I hear it.
I've been focusing actually going back to more Silver Age stuff, like Tales of Suspense,
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Gotcha. The stuff that you grew up with, I guess, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm not quite that old, but
I was gonna say, you look good for your age, man.
yeah, but close.
Yeah. How about you, Bill? What are you reading?
Lemire, Matt Ken.
Yeah, nice. Valiant guy then, huh? Mm-hmm. You're reading the Valiant books.
No, actually, that's the stuff I'm not. That Department H.
Okay.
By Descender.
Yeah.
Who's writing Moon Knight now?
Yeah. Oh, really?
It's been awesome. I read The Vision. I can't remember who writes that.
Oh yeah. I've been hearing really great things about that
very
book.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm really not into the superhero books over there.
Right. Yeah. I'm way into it.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I love them. Yeah. How about you, camera guys?
I'm reading all of DC's Rebirth. That's my new stuff. 100 Bullets.
Oh yeah.
I'm catching up on that.
Yeah. That was our like goal with Postal was to do something that was like old school Vertigo, you know, and which I think is what we got, especially with our new colorist. He's got that very flat comics look, you know. So he's been, he's just been knocking it out of the park. You know, we want to do something. Well, you know, again, I'm speaking for Brian and Matt. I didn't really read that stuff. I read the first issue of Preacher the other day, actually, because they've been giving those out at all the comic shops for free to promote the new show. So
Yeah.
I read that for the first time, and I was like, oh man, I wish I knew about this comic. Well, I wish I had read the comic before I started Postal, because now I'm just stealing all of the panels. You know, I'm stealing Steve Dillon left and right. Becky Cloonan's actually going to be here.
Oh.
Yeah, did you hear about that? Like I said, it's like a last minute announcement. So yeah, and she's working with him on Punisher. Yeah, and I can't wait to pick her brain about that because Steve Dillon, he's some kind of master, you know. So like the way he draws, because I don't know if you guys know about this or not, but drawing conversations is very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it seems like it would be easy because it's like, oh, we just draw people, fucking. But oh, sorry for cursing, camera. But
We're explicit.
We're
Yeah.
explicit. Don't worry. You're good.
oh, right on. Okay. but you know, you do this thing where, especially with Mark, and for those of you who read, then you already know. But Mark is very stoic. You know, that was a very conscious decision where I wanted him to not have a whole lot of emotion. You know, keep all of his feelings very close to his chest, so that when the big moments happen, then you know it's a big moment and there's a bigger emotional impact for the reader. So to have him in conversation, which is a lot of the book, it becomes difficult because you're trying to think, how many ways can I draw this? How many new ways can I stage this scene? You know, so that becomes difficult. That's like a challenge that we have with Postal. And then you know, I'm 15 issues in, and I pick up Preacher for the first time, and Steve Dillon is a master at the diner scene. Yo, that guy can draw a conversation like nobody's business. And that's where it starts. Yo, that guy's a genius though, and he's got like, because he draws like deceptively simple, you know. But there's a lot going on. His acting is on point, and the way he crops faces, the way he does a composition is inherently interesting, you know? And few people will crop a face the way he does, where it's like, you see like 10% of the guy's head or whatever, and that guy's in the foreground and he's talking. So that stuff is very interesting. That stuff is very much a hallmark of the 90s, you know? Very few people are doing that stuff anymore. So that was like kind of a kick in the pants for me. So if you see me like stealing a lot of 90s Vertigo stuff, I'm gonna do it with no shame. I'm not gonna be secretive about it. That's what we're going for, you know?
No, it's not stealing, it's an homage.
Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna be calling it too, man. Yeah, you already know. Although, you know, Postal becomes like a huge hit, yeah, and then Steve Dillon's like, what about that kid that was saying that he's stealing me all the time? Oh no, I'm gonna have to have a conversation with him. But so that's yeah, let's talk about the influences of Postal. I guess that's one of the questions, right? But I think that's like been a big thing. That's been a big help. You know, when you like, I mean, it seems silly to say this, but like 15 issues is considered like a long run. You know, I mean, I think Jack Kirby did like, he would do like 60 issues without a break. Mark Bagley is a huge inspiration of mine, and he did 100, help me out here guys, 150, 115 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man with no break.
Oh yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man.
Yeah, and like some of the issues for a while, for a few months, he was doing 2 issues a month. I mean, the guy's a machine, you know?
I think it was 135.
135.
I think it was 135 for Ultimate Spider-Man, which I did read. One of the very few Spider-Man lines that I did read.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God, so good. So
yes,
good.
It was very well written, very well drawn, too.
Oh, dude, can we talk about that? Have you guys all read Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man?
I have.
I've read a few.
Okay.
I have most of them. It's just I have most of a lot of things.
If everybody said, yeah, we all read the ending, I was going to spoil it, but because you have it, I don't want to spoil it, but let me just...
And that's where Miles Morales comes from.
Yeah.
You actually see the setup for him inheriting the Spider-Man mantle, which was very awesome. The last 6 issues, which was the death of Peter Parker, was...
You ruined it.
Yeah. Sorry.
I would still read it.
No, it's still worth the read. I
Already knew
recommend
it,
that to everybody. I'm sorry. I recommend it to anybody.
Dude, it's so good.
It was awesome.
Look, I don't want to give too much away about it, but it's so good. You ever read something that's so good that you're like, how did no other writer since 1962 figure this ending out before? You know, like it's that perfect, it's that succinct. It's just like, oh, of course Ultimate Spider-Man had to die. Of course that had to happen because all of the hints were there. Like Stan Lee hinted at it, you know? Like that's how good it is. Like that's how perfect it is. But, you know, I guess I brought that up because it's like, he's a big inspiration for me because he's one of those dependable long run guys, which is what I want to be my niche because very few artists out there want to do that, you know. the industry is real tough right now because among many reasons, it's tough to make noise for yourself. You know, like Postal issue number 1 made a lot of noise because issue number 1s make a lot of noise. You know, but once you get to issue 15, you're competing with week after week of new number 1s. So that's like the challenge for us in Postal is how do we get more eyes on this book that's, you know, like competing with new, fresh, big comics. You know, it's tough. And everybody after 6 issues leaves to do another thing, and it becomes like their whole new thing. And so my goal though is still very much like, you know, I don't care. Like, what do I care? I just want to be the Mark Bagley, I was gonna say Jack Kirby, and then I caught myself. I felt very like, but I want to be like Jack Kirby in that I want to be dependable. I want to have a long run. I want people to notice me and be like, oh, that's the guy that can do a long series, you know, and he can deliver on time, and he can be that guy. And if that can be my niche, that's great. You know, I would very happily be that artist. So that's what I'm hoping for, and very luckily, Matt ushered me in, and it's Top Cow, so it's not like I have to fight, you know. I feel like, hey, how's it going? This is for Going Postal with Matt Hawkins and Isaac Goodhart. Yeah. She'll read it when she's older.
And this was live, folks. This was live.
Tell your parents.
But so, you know, like it's one of those things. I'm thinking about it a lot now. You know, like, do I want to raise my profile by jumping ship and going to another thing, or hey, buddy, or do I want to like stay on the book? And you know, like I'm very lucky. If that's the question, then I remind myself how very lucky I am because you know, I'm on a book that's extremely well written. You know, it's better written than most Marvel and DC books, for sure, for absolutely. And I'll say that. I'll say that forever. I mean, Brian Hill is a genius. You know, I mean, Matt created the book. He created the characters. He created the story, and he created this framework for Brian, whose specialty is dialogue and characterization and morality, to come in and take it to that level, to take it to this amazing degree that he's writing. So, you know, for that reason, why would I leave that? You know. So hopefully we can keep going. We've got some really big stuff on the way. We got the crossover, like I was saying, and then we got some other huge news, which I'll let Matt handle. But that's what I'm going to be doing. We have 24 issues planned. We're at 15 right now, so we'll be at this for at least another year. We've got the hardcover coming out in October. So if you guys haven't read it yet, you can read it with the big, nice hardcover. It'll look great on your bookshelf, and we're gonna keep on rolling for as long as possible. So that's what we're doing. I got the Witchblade thing, so everything is cool. Yeah. So how about you guys? What else are you reading besides?
The Tide #1 shook me out of the superhero genre.
Really?
No, this guy was all
he went eager for Gaga over it.
until he picked up that book.
Yeah, you and me both, man. You and me both.
I read that, and anything
Oh,
Matt
yeah, I think
Hawkins
this might
became
be
like
Matt.
a drug.
Hold on.
Oh, this is live, folks.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah,
351. Yeah, we got the door open for you. All right, right on.
Matt got lost at room 315, folks.
Dyslexia sucks.
So type shook you out, huh? You really like
Yeah,
it?
and pretty much anything written by Matt Hawkins, it became like a drug. I've been grabbing it up everywhere I could, and of course that's expanded my horizons even beyond that.
I think we covered Top Cow like every podcast, right?
Every podcast.
Yes,
Every
every
podcast.
Top
podcast.
cow issue.
Right on. You guys looking for a guest? I like to talk a lot.
Yes,
I'll
please.
hold you to that.
Yo,
Yes,
let's
please.
hook it up, man. Nice.
Yes, please.
Yo, my buddy Phil, he was one of the Top Cow Talent Hunt winners with me, which is how I got the book. That's a really cool thing to talk about. I'm gonna put a pin on that. We're gonna circle right back to that. But he picked up after Rasan, so he did the second volume. Yeah, there he is. All right, right on. And he actually minutes ago just sent me some sketches that he's been doing of the Postal characters. We got a date planned for San Diego Comic-Con where he's got some
Oh,
sketches,
wow.
I got some sketches, and we're doing some really cool giveaways. So he just texted me them right now. So if you like the type and you like his art, Phil Seavey. I don't think you saw this yet.
Was it?
Yeah, but it's pretty dope. Yeah, but so the rest of the panel is just gonna be me and Matt watching YouTube videos.
No. How many of you guys want to? Is this working? Can you guys hear me?
There we go.
There you go.
You guys to get that? I knew Bueller. Some younger people don't get it. But,
If they didn't get it, they didn't get the introduction either.
right. I've never done a single property panel. I was talking earlier. I said maybe no one will show up when we leave. But thank you guys for coming. So normally we do a big panel with a bunch of different properties. So I appreciate you all coming. One thing I would like to do is Mark. Mediating the other issues in modern or take off. Well,
I think
hold
it's
on.
just us.
Just us. How many of you are interested in developing and building your own property? Any of you? A couple of you? What I think might be more interesting is why don't we talk about how we built this thing from the ground up?
Let's do that.
I mean, because most of you, I'm assuming you're here because you already like the property. So I think if that's more of what you're interested in, when I do a lot of panels, it's more about kind of teaching people what it takes and what's involved in the process. I have a blog site called matttalks.com. It's like TED Talks, but it's Matt Talks. And on that blog site is actually my original outline I wrote for Postal. I was just going to send you the link. He's actually never read it. I gave it to Brian. Just to start, Postal came to me about 10 years ago. And part of it was, I always in the back of my mind said, what if I want to be a criminal someday? It's why I've never gotten a tattoo or piercings or any of that stuff, because you always hear about that on cops. It's like, look for the guy with Mario on his inner right thigh. And I'm like, oh, okay. So no tats, no earrings. So I always kept in the back of my mind that if I wanted to be a thief, I would need to be clean cut. Secondly, I always looked at, I'm not going to risk my future and my freedom for, $500. It's going to need to be $30 million. So if you're gonna steal and you're gonna do that stuff, and I'm not saying I would do that. I've done fine on my own.
Well, you're being recorded now, so like, if you didn't get a tattoo, like now it's look for the guy with the tattoo or the guy that's saying, if I became a criminal.
I'm busted. But and jump in any time here. I'm just kind of reflecting on the process. The thing is, I always kept in the back of my mind that my third or fourth career might be going to crime. Now that I'm married with a couple kids, it's not likely. But I always read about these guys who steal a lot of money and they go to Mexico. And then about 10 years ago, I read this guy's story about how he stole like $10 million, bought a place in Mexico, and the cartels were taking care of him. And then one day they just got sick of him, so they killed him, took his money, and made a deal. And so I thought about that. I'm like, fuck, man, I wouldn't want to go to Mexico if I had a bunch of money. I'd want to live in Malibu. I mean, that's just me, and hang out with celebrities and stuff and date models. Well, how could you do that? You couldn't hide in plain sight really in the United States anymore with facial recognition and all the things that we have. So I started in the back of my mind playing with the idea of like witness protection for criminals, And so the sort of the genesis of it was, well, what would you need to do to change your identity in the United States so that you can stay here and keep your money? And I've always been a fan of Northern Exposure and Twin Peaks. Northern Exposure, I like the small, quirky characters from small town, which you'll notice there's a lot of that in this book. And I always like Twin Peaks because it had that sort of weirdness, in kind of small town, kind of a murder mystery, which is kind of where the murder came from. That murder actually was Brian's idea. And this is 7 or 8 years after I started developing it, Brian came in, and then about a year after that, Isaac came in. The long genesis of it was I decided that, okay, you need a place that was off the grid, that didn't kind of exist. Where could you do that? And I found several places in the United States that planes don't fly over. There's no plane flowers, there's no satellite coverage. And there's holes in Google Earth in various places that, so I started researching some of that, and for whatever reason there's a giant freaking hole in Wyoming, because there's nothing there. And so that's why I placed Eden in Wyoming. And I don't remember if I came up with the name or if Brian came up with the name. I'll have to go back and look at my original outline. I don't remember if I called it Eden. I don't remember. But can you shut that door? Is that okay?
Yeah, I get that open for you. Actually.
It's some anime thing. It's loud. And then, with facial recognition the way it is, you need to tweak your face. You need to alter your genetic profile in CODIS. You need to alter your fingerprints in the system. And who can do that? Well, hackers can do that. So you create a system. And then I love the idea of something that's kind of old-timey but high-tech. So the one thing I like about Postal, I don't know how much we've got into this, but like when you go underground into one of the barns, there's like a barn. Have you drawn that yet? The server farm?
Not the server farm, no. We did, in issue 6, we got Laura going down, there's an outhouse in the middle of nowhere, and she types in a code, and then the floor of the outhouse, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things like that we've, so before any of this was even written, we had sort of laid out kind of the idea of the town. And the thing is, like, underneath and behind the scenes, there's all this crazy high-tech shit. And to cover that are small churches, and the first 4 issues are pretty religiously following the outline I wrote. The second 4 issues are very loosely and more Brian than me. And then the third arc I didn't have anything to do with it at all, which is why my name's not on it. But Brian, and the idea of the Asperger's kid came to me because that was a roommate of mine in college. I actually was at UCLA in the physics program, and there's a lot of autistic and Asperger people in science programs, and these guys are smart people. And it always bothered me because he got picked on a lot, and this guy is now one of the guys that's written the algorithms for the Predator drones and saving all our soldiers' lives, and all these sort of things. And this is a guy who used to beat up in college, and I used to get in fights with people to protect him, so it was really interesting. And living with him for a couple years that I did, I kind of watched his manners and stuff like that. And I'm a science guy, and Brian is more of a psychology guy, I would say. Brian's kind of a literature snob a little bit, you probably picked that up.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
His emails are novel-like.
There's no kids in here, right? Okay. No. He emailed me when I wrote him my outline for Symmetry, this other book I do, and I said, he's like, that's like a perfect Hegelian dialect. I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I'm a physics guy. You're literature. Talk to me in English. And he's like, oh, that's like, the Tempest meets this and that, and all the Shakespeare and Aristotle. And I'm like, I don't know whatever.
Mark's growth is going through the 7 rings of Jupiter. This is an email he sent me.
Really?
And so each
this
of the 7 rings is a different level of, and I was just like, I skipped to the end where he's just like, anyway, it looks good. Okay, good.
This isn't a knock on Brian. I think, and actually, it's in a way, it's complex. I think his dialogue is better than mine, but I think my plots are better than his. So that's kind of like that's my opinion. You know what I mean? So, and actually, ultimately, in writing, the dialogue tends to be more important. So, he seemed better fitted for this, and he did the research on the Asperger's character. But the idea, what I'm trying to say is, you see the development process. I mean, my development process is much longer than most people for these things, but in many cases for me, from initial thought to publication, it could be as long as 10 years. I mean, that's extreme. But some stuff I've done and developed, like Symmetry, I wrote an outline and the book was out within a year. I mean, you can accelerate it very quickly. But if you got the artist, you've got the development. But it just takes some time. So, and then I'll get to your part. And then so Brian and I started meeting, going back and forth, and he wrote the first 4 issues off of sort of my long outline. And which I said, that entire outline is published on my site, so you can read it. If you want to see what an initial property document looks like, that for successful. And we've sold, this isn't official, but we sold Postal as a TV show, so hopefully it'll get set up, it'll get made. We don't know for sure if it'll get made, but it's at least been sold. So that's the first step is over. I actually originally wrote the document as a TV pitch. So keep that in mind when you read the document. I wrote it as a TV pitch. And if you read it, it says pilot episode, sequential. One of the things when you write TV, you have to create what they call a serialization engine. What is the week-to-week storyline that keeps people coming back? The A-team is what's the job they got to go get hired to go do. That's the week-to-week storyline. In Monk or one of these detective shows, what's the crime they got to go solve? That's or CSI. What's the body they got to fix? Who killed who? And so it's what drives that storyline. And TV's become a little less like that because they're willing to do arcing shows. You see more and more arcing shows like True Detective or Game of Thrones, which are much more arcing, but those are harder to sell. It's much more easy to sell a show that has some sort of a serialization engine.
So Matt, what are the levels of selling the show? So first is option, right? And then where do you go from there?
Well, you option it to you can option it 1 of 2 places. You can option it to a production company like Gillenher Productions or Legendary Pictures, which is a production company. They're not they don't actually make the movies. There's a production entity behind it. Like if you look at Legendary films, they're made by Universal. Legendary just produces them. Well, now they used to be Warner Brothers. So then they will, if they're not a studio, like if you option it to a production company, they will then try to set it up at a network. And there's sort of three levels of television. There's what I call deep cable, there's cable, and there's network. And to me, deep cable is the place to be now. That's HBO, Showtime, Cinemax. That's where the good stuff is happening. Even to me, AMC a little bit is kind of deep cable, even though they would call it cable. Cable is USA, TNT, and then network is ABC, CBS, NBC. The difference is, like, if you have a show on ABC, CBS, NBC, you need 5 to 7 million people watching that show for them not to cancel it. You can have a show on HBO that has 2 million people watching it, and they're throwing a party every week. So, I mean, it's just, and that's one of the things that has really changed entertainment. You know, we talk about how there's so many people. Everything is designed for a different group of people. There are TV shows that you've never heard of because they're for someone that's completely different from you. You know, all I gotta do is look through the reality programming, and there's a million shows in there I've never heard of. Yeah, so that's television. So then you set it up. Usually, once you set it up, with a writer, like a showrunner. Like Postal, we had a showrunner that was attached. We met over 6 months and developed a pitch for the pilot, which was rudimentarily the initial arc, but not really. He changed it quite a bit. But actually, the TV writer in this case did something very rare to a comic property. He actually made it better, in my opinion. Since I wrote it, I can say that, right? So then once we do that, we go sell the thing. Then they'll budget it. They'll try to cast it. If it gets approved at that point, then they'll go shoot the pilot. Then they'll take a look at it. And then the company says, all right, we'll greenlight 6, 12, 24 episodes. And then it goes from there. You know, it's really all about ratings. You know, so if you have a show that you like, make sure you at least DVR it, even if you watch it on the torrents. You know, so because that's ultimately why stuff gets canceled that you like. It's because everyone pirates it. That's the question. Yeah. But so back to Postal and development. Once you have sort of the core idea, Brian and I sort of went back and forth. We fleshed out all the various characters. There's some of the characters, like you look at my original thing, there's some of the characters that were already fleshed out, like Sheriff Magnum, the mom, what's her name? Laura Schifrin, and Mark, and Maggie. Those 4 characters were all fairly fleshed out in the document I wrote. Yeah. None of the other characters existed. I mean, the idea that she was in the diner, that was my setup, and she was a pivotal character, possibly a flip to the FBI, was in the original document. And the whole opening scene, I just love the opening scene about being in a church and then they assassinate the guy in the church. I love that. So that was in the original document. But I actually had an extended family. There were brothers and sisters, and Mark was the youngest, and Brian convinced me to cut it all out, and I think it works. So there were other characters that were in the story. So the one thing you learn about comics specifically is it's very collaborative. When you're developing a property, when you're co-writing with someone, it's hard for me to co-write because I kind of bullheaded, but you know, you develop and you build these things out, and then you work with an artist who's going to develop out how it looks and change things. And there's so many times I've worked on projects where the artist has changed some of the core concepts just by the way they draw it, make it better. So, and we're open to questions, by the way. It's a small group, so if you guys have any specific questions, but to you, Isaac, when you started designing this initially and you started reading some of the initial stuff, what was your thought process?
Well, my thought process is I get the script, and then the first thing that I do personally, not that every artist is like this, but I start trying to develop a language for it. So for me, it's, oh, here it is. It's like Twin Peaks. It's like True Detective. And I had watched True Detective, and I loved it. So immediately I start like watching that while I'm sketching to kind of like take screen caps and to just kind of develop a visual language. You know, I know what I want it to look like. It's out of my wheelhouse, so it's kind of like learning a new language in a way. So those are my first thoughts. My first thoughts are, what are my thoughts? You know, I know that it's like this. I know that this is what I want from it visually, and I know that there's a precedent. So for me, on the visual side, that's what I'm doing. And as we go on, and as I get more confident, I start to move away from that. We start to make it its own thing. You know, I think that if you look at Volume 3 and you compare it to Volume 1, the differences are very obvious. You know, there's definitely been more of a emphasis for me on like outfits, fashion, the way that these guys look. I know that this was one of the things I wanted to do very early on, and I was touching upon it earlier, is that I wanted Mark to be very stoic. I didn't want him to have a lot of emotion, to show a lot of facial expression. And that was also in the script, of course, but I wanted everybody to react around him. You know, I wanted everybody to act a lot around him, and then once he did react, those were like the big moments. You know, we have that at the end of issue 1, we have that at the end of issue 3. You know, we really sell it that way. So those were the things I was very initially conscious and aware of.
How many of you all been around autistic or Asperger people? Zero? Okay. When you're around some of these people closely for an extended period of time, you realize they really do not look at their world the same way. And I'm not saying that's right or it's wrong, it's just different. You know, and I think that's what we tried to develop, and I tried to push early on, and it was been carried on, is that these characters can be heroic. You know what I mean? There's really no reason. And I don't know if there's another comic book character that has Asperger's that's the hero. But I wanted to try to do something that kind of honored my friend. And like I said, this guy works for Raytheon, and he's developing stuff that's saving lives, you know what I mean, and killing the other people's lives. And I, you know, some of these people are, I'm a good think tank, and some of these people are people I know too, so it's interesting, and it helps to be able to ground. By the way, don't ever hesitate to do that. If you know people, don't make it exactly some person. The way I do it is I'll take a look at 2 or 3 people and merge them into one person. That way none of them can ever say, oh, that's based on me, I'm gonna sue you. None of my friends would do that anyway. And in the case of actually with Postal, I got the guy who did it to sign, because it's very like him. I got him to sign a release, and he's fine with it. So, yeah, be careful with legal shit. So, yeah, then we did the first arc, and it did very well. They kind of ran a little more loosely with the second arc, and I haven't even read most of the third arc yet.
It's pretty good. I think you like it.
I didn't read it because it affects the other stuff I'm doing, but I brought it to read on the plane.
Nice.
So I think that's a nice thing when you get involved with creators that you trust. I have my own things I have to do, and so I knew they were going to do a good job. At least I hope they did. When I go read it, I'll let you know.
Good.
I've read 9 and 10.
If you don't like it, don't let me know.
Well, you'll find out.
You're fired. Oh, I guess he didn't like it.
I always initially envisioned Postal as 24 issues. You know, is what I always sort of initially. I think I told you that from the beginning, right?
Yep.
Yep. And I asked.
Well, actually, if I could jump in, you said that it was going to be 4 issues. So I was storyboarding at the time in California, and they said 4-issue miniseries, and that's all I knew. And I was just like, great, that sounds amazing. And I was storyboarding until 7:00 p.m. and then from 7 until like 4 in the morning, I would draw a page of Postal. You know, and I would get like my 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and then storyboard, and then draw a comic. And then you said, oh, the sale for issue 1 was really good. We're going to keep going. We're going to extend it 8 issues. I thought,
oh, really?
great, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then I got the email for 24 issues. We're going to do 24. How do you feel about doing that? I quit my job before I responded to you. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I moved to New York.
Really?
I was dating my girlfriend long distance. So for 3 years we were in a long distance relationship, and then I moved back. I was like, we're gonna make a real go at this. So that's how my life is going.
And you agreed to sit, they gave you a big raise, remember?
Yeah.
So that's still one line, right? Wow, you know what? I really, in my head, it was 24 all along. I guess it wasn't. So I think part of the thing is I would like to do Postal Think Tank all these books forever. I love these characters, but the reality is it's really dependent on sales. It's part of the reason we write everything in 4 or 5 issue arcs specifically, and we try to leave it where the story can continue or it can stop. And part of that is just the curse of independent comic sales. You know, I mean, you want to have an idea. Every story arc needs to have a sort of a conclusion, because the last thing you want to do is end it without finishing it, because the people that are reading will then hate you and they're not going to buy your next thing. So you got to deal with sort of the realities of it. And you know, like I've never written anything from Marvel or DC. I'm one of the few, I think, regularly working comic book writers that has not. I can't think of another one that regularly publishes work on an ongoing basis that has not.
Right.
Eric Stevenson, he's the only other one.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure. Him and I. It used to be Jim Zub and a couple other guys, but they're doing more work now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, But it's a hard road, you know, it's not easy. I mean, one of the things you realize is guys like Isaac and I will go down and sit down at our booth and be there most of the day. You know, once you're Mark Miller and Brubaker, you come down for an hour. You know, but one thing I noticed about that, because we were at, where we were next to Ed? He was over there at the image booth? You were there, right?
Yeah, Eric Larson, right?
No,
yeah.
Eric
Stevens.
No, Mark Miller.
Oh, that wasn't me. No, I wasn't there.
No, but I mean, he had a big line of people, but I actually counted the people, and I'm like, I did a little experiment. I counted the people he had for the hour that he was there, and then I counted the people that I talked to over the course of the entire day, and I actually talked to more people. And it was, well, that's not a diss on Mark. I would love to come down for 2 hours and see my whole people for the day. Standing in my booth for 8 hours is very tiring. You know, I just, a lot of times you're talking to people that don't know who you are. So it's possible to convert a new reader or a new fan. And you talk to a lot of new people that don't know who you are.
Right, yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm pretty lucky because I'm an artist, so I can sketch, which is something that you told me, which was, you know, one of the early tips is that I can sketch at the table, so that's, a lot of people find that inherently interesting, so.
Like to watch it.
Right, people like to watch, so I'll meet a lot of people that way. Donovan, you're a new guy, you're a new fan, right? So yeah, exactly, so it totally works, yeah.
And see, it's much harder as a writer who can't draw, because he can just sit there and sketch out. I have to actually be friendly and talk to people, you know? It's just a lot harder. Because I'm actually, interestingly, I'm much an introvert, which people find hard to believe, but this is, when I do these panels, I'm not like nervous because I've been doing this for so long. I mean, I do 10, 15 panels a year for 23 years now, so it's been a lot, but I don't enjoy it actually. No
Sure
offense.
you do.
Yeah, well, this moment right now,
Except for this one.
we like this moment.
But no, I mean, if you guys have any questions about Postal development, I mean, I just wanted to consider talking more about the characters and where it's going. I actually don't know where it's going past the third volume. I'd have to ask him, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Or you want to spill some of the beans? Go for it.
Well, the next arc we were talking about earlier is the Aryan Brotherhood is coming to take Eden.
Quick aside by that, he pitched that to me as issue 5. And do you know this?
No, I didn't know this.
He pitched me this Aryan, Brian is black, and he pitched me this arc about writing a white supremacist guy that was likable. No, that you liked. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
And I said no. And so
I
we
said
kept,
no.
Yeah, I said no. And so we kept going along in the series. So if you love this 4th arc, and I actually think it works better as the 4th arc because people know the characters better. The world
I think
is
you're
more
right.
established. I think doing that in the 2nd arc would have caused more problems. Sometimes it takes a series a little more time to breathe before you can really understand the world.
Right.
But yeah, the idea is to take this American History X type guy and actually kind of make him likable, which was weird to me, and I'm curious to see how he does it. You know, it's the kind of story I would write. So.
Yeah. It's the best issue that he's written yet. It's great, and that's issue 14. It's coming out in August, and it's actually that character is in issue 1. So
Really?
yeah, it's page 11. I know all of the page
Oh,
numbers.
is that the character that came in?
It's-
The Minds Manners?
Right, exactly. So when we first meet Laura, she's talking to him. All right. So yeah, and you see him from the back first, and you see on the back. So if you guys read issue 1 of Postal, you might remember the guy with the tattoo on the back of his neck that it's 8-8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's I guess H. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but H is the 8th letter in the alphabet, so HH is.
Yep.
Yeah, Heil Hitler, which is so that's like a very popular tattoo among the skinheads. So he's the skinhead, and he goes to prison, and now he's reformed. He's not racist. He goes to prison, and I'm not going to give that away, but there's a reason why he's not that prejudiced anymore, or that version of it. So he goes to Eden, and Laura says, all right, you can live with us. And then the guys that he got into and he clashed with in prison, now they're coming back to get revenge on him. Yeah, and they figure out that he's in Eden, so now Eden has to choose, do we protect him, do we protect one of our own, or do we let the Aryan Brotherhood kind of take over our town? You know, one of the things that I love about Brian is that one of the themes of Postal is very much morality, you know? So, and it's about nothing is what it seems. You know, here's a town that's a Norman Rockwell painting, but it has that deep, dark underbelly of it. All of these characters, even the waitress, who is a diner waitress, and she's very nice to Mark. Then in issue 3, we find out what she's actually up to, her criminal dealings. So it's all about nothing is what it seems. You can't take anything at face value. And so that character that we introduced at one, now we're seeing in issue 14 what his backstory is.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about the twist.
You know what's funny is when you talk about that skinhead guy from issue 1,
Yeah.
I wrote the thing for that, and I wrote it as random skinhead. And I didn't even care about the character. Now Brian turned it into a major character. And
Yeah.
that happens, which is really interesting because you'll introduce characters in a storyline and then you realize, oh, I need this character. Oh, there's a character we never did anything with. You can flesh them out. So you'd be surprised how much stuff you kind of figure out while you're going along. I would say most writers I know, they know the beginning, they know the end, and they kind of meander to get there. Which is why sometimes it meanders off course. I pretty meticulously outline my stuff. When I'm working with other people, I do different things. And interestingly, I'm more of a slow burn guy with a big payoff. Brian is more of an in-your-face guy because I don't know if you knew this, the Maggie thing where she was in the thing and shot the one guy.
Yeah.
He wanted her to kill them all.
Yep.
The whole thing. He had this thing where he's blowing them all away and he was shooting them all. I'm like, no. She shoots one. He has to charge her. She needs to have a reason for it. Don't make her a ruthless killer. And he's like, oh, okay. So. The first 6 or 7 issues, I reined him in quite a bit because he wanted to push it even further. But that's why it's interesting now, 9 to 12 plus, it seems like he's been unleashed a bit. And I think it actually works better that way. I think when you come out of the gate and you shock everyone so quickly, it becomes a shock series versus, to me, which is more of a dramatic kind of build. So.
Right, and it becomes harder, I would imagine, to top everything. You know, like, you see all these action movies now where everything is dialed up to level 10 from the first scene. So every scene is just that same amount of loud, and there's no like crescendo anymore, and it becomes a wall of noise. So one of the reasons why I love Postal so much is because it was a slow burn, you know, and the payoff now is a bigger impact because we took our time to get there.
See, to me, Jaws is a perfect movie. You never actually see the shark until almost 2/3 of the movie's over. You saw the fin, you see the tail, you see this. You never actually see the shark until later on. And I think that is that sort of build and sort of Alfred Hitchcock of it all gives it more of an oomph. You know, I've seen, you're exactly right. I see all these movies where they start off with this massive thing like Mission Impossible or whatever it is, and then all it is, it's like this massive intro, they pull, or James Bond, and then they pull it back, they do some character shit, massive. And who's the guy who's the producer on all the Matrix films and produces a lot of that?
Okay, is it Bruckheimer? Guys, help me out.
No. He was
Wachowski brothers.
No, not they were the directors and the writers. What's his name? It's not Chuck Rowan. It's another guy. Anyway, point being is Joel something. And I met with him. No, not him. It'll come to me later. But the point of it was he had a thing when we were in meetings and development where he would say something big needs to happen every 10 minutes.
Joel Silver.
Joel Silver. That's right. Something big needs to happen every 10 minutes. And if you would go watch Matrix or any movie he produces, you'll notice something in your face happens every 10 minutes. And to me, that's a little overdrawn, but it's the ADD society we live in, you know? Anyway, do you guys have any questions about development, stuff you want to do, specifically formats, pitching processes, any of this stuff?
Breaking in.
Are you guys, any of you artists? All writers? See, I mean, for me, you know, writing, have you tried writing?
Yeah, sure.
I haven't seen any of it, so obviously you're not that
Well, my writing is I would love for you to read it, but you know who's one of my biggest heroes? David Mazzucchelli. And so if I could have his career trajectory, that would be amazing. You know, I mean, here's a guy that just like was amazing at DC Comics, and then he went to Marvel, and he was amazing there, and then or reverse. And then he decided he was bored with superheroes, so he just did his own independent weird stuff. So the stuff that I want to do is very, very weird. You know, it's certainly not mainstream. So yeah, one day I'll get to that. Yeah, I definitely want to like make my mark in the comic industry first and have an undeniable. I want people to I want people who hate me to be like, yeah, I mean, he sucks, but he's really good at drawing, I guess, you know? Like, that's my dream. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing about Postal, I mean, it's still building. It's not a barn burner for anyone, but it's everyone knows about it. At this point, people have heard of it. You know what I mean?
Right,
So
yeah,
it's,
sure.
People, you know, Think Tank is the book I do that actually is weird for me because it sells the worst of anything I work on. But it's the most critically acclaimed book I do. In fact, the book that sold the most units for me, and I'm not going to say which one it was, had the worst reviews for anything I did. And I'm just like, looking at that, I'm like, okay, bad reviews, these critics don't like it, equals sales. You know, what do I want? Do I want people to love these, or do I want to make money? I got a wife and kids, so.
A lot of people saw Batman v Superman. Oh, and Warcraft.
Yeah.
I like Warcraft, by the way.
What?
I liked it.
I did too. You play the game?
Yes, I
That's
did.
why.
And I knew the lore and
Yeah.
all the.
That's
Yeah, that's
exactly
David
why.
Bowie's son directed that.
Really?
Yeah, David Bowie's son.
No, Warcraft is an interesting thing because it's a film they made for fans of the game. I mean, I went with both my sons. One played the game, the other did not. My son that played the game loved it. My son that did not said, I don't know what the fuck was going on. And they're 15 and 14, so it's you know, so it's interesting. So you know, it's just fun to see the world come to life. You know,
Well,
I think that-
what's funny about that is I actually had a few coworkers of mine that went to go watch it, and they absolutely enjoyed it.
and they didn't play the game.
They did not play the game. But I was like, well, if you pay attention, there's enough to connect the dots.
Yeah.
If you pay attention to the little tidbits that they give away,
Right
it's
on,
enough
right.
to connect the dots, and you'll enjoy the movie.
Nice.
And there are some parts that they actually asked me, like critical details of characters or events and stuff like that. But other than that, they enjoyed the movie.
Cool. Well, that's the first I've heard of a non-gamer that said they liked it. So most of the reviews, people have had something about it, say they didn't like it. I'm like, why? And I didn't understand it. I'm like, okay. No, development is hard. You know, the thing, and part of the reason why I use Think Tank as an example is because Think Tank is a very specific book, and I don't think dumb people can read it. You know, and that's probably why I've limited my audience so much. You know, because the biggest problem I have with comics as a medium is I read so many comics that aren't very good. And I check, how many of you guys think in your lifetime you've read more than 1,000 comics? I know, yeah, totally. More than 10,000, you know, maybe. You know, how many of those do you actually remember the story?
About good 35 to 45%.
Well, you're more than most. But I'm just saying, if I pull a cover out and look at the comic, I guarantee you I couldn't remember what the story was about. You know, I mean, very few. I mean, the exceptions, there's the Watchmen's, the Killing Jokes. I mean, those are the exceptions, you know. But I would say for most people, so Mr. Eidetic memory here, most of us cannot remember comics, and the reason why is because they're very forgettable. You know? I mean, my wife made me rewatch all 10 seasons of Friends recently in a giant marathon, and I realized
Sorry. You gotta tell her, go with coupling. It's so much easier. It's like Friends and Bridge.
well, I was on my computer, she was watching it, so I heard it, I realized, I know I'd seen them all, but I didn't remember any of them, you know, I'm like, yeah, okay, Anna, Ross, Rachel, and whatever. You know, it's just a lot of that stuff, even highly successful TV shows are very forgettable, you know, so the stuff I developed, I think Postal, I think Think Tank, Tithe, a lot of these books, we and everything Brian and I do and everyone we're working with now, we're trying to develop stuff that's memorable, makes you think about it, you know, I mean, I want to write a book that when you put it down, you think about it for a while, it stays with you, because there's movies I watched that, like The Room. Have you seen The Room? Fantastic film. It's freaky. It's about a woman, or I guess she's a teenager who's kidnapped and stuck in a room and raped by a guy for 7 years, and they have a kid together. And so she finally escapes with the kid. And it's this crazy story. Brie Larson. Is that out? Yeah. It's called The Room. But it won an Academy Award, so I wouldn't have known about it if not for that. Popped up on the iTunes thing. And I watched it with my wife, and I'm like, I kind of liked it, but I didn't love it. It stuck with me for days, you know, and I just kept thinking about it. And there's the movies that scare me, like a movie like Alien, when I was 8, scared the shit out of me. Okay, that movie wouldn't scare me today. But movies that scare me today are like Postal. Okay, because I know there's some twisted fucks somewhere that are probably doing that. You know what I mean?
It's a realistic.
Yeah. You know, there's movies like with the Green Burrito, or that didn't even scare me. So I'm like, I don't believe that there's still Aboriginal people eating people. Or Green Inferno. Green Burrito. They are eating them, right?
That's when they decide to open their own Mexican restaurant.
Yeah, made with people ingredients. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the stuff. That's part of the reason why we do Postal, Think Tank, The Tide. We have this separate little world, and these are all stories that to me could happen. they're kind of crazy and heightened. Even Wildfire, where dandelions destroy Los Angeles, which is, if you've not read my other book, Wildfire, that I have it at the table. It's a GMO conspiracy thriller about an accelerated plant growth serum that gets out into the wild, and it affects dandelions first. They grow out of control, cause a fire, and that causes the protein to jump to higher plant species, which causes seismic problems and takes out Los Angeles. I always wanted to blow up my hometown, because my mom, every time, I live in LA, every time my mom hears about wildfires, those wildfires are about 30 miles north of LA, up in the mountains. They never come down into the city. And she calls me every time, "Are you okay?" I'm like, so about twice a year, or more than that actually, I get a call, "Oh, the wildfires affecting you?" I'm like, "No." I didn't even know there was one.
I'm Bakersfield.
Oh, you're Bakersfield?
Yep.
So do they hit up there?
They're not too far, but because of the way that the grapevine is formed,
Oh,
they
yeah.
mostly stay up within the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hit any of the fields.
Well, that's the kind of stuff where I look at governments and I'm like, okay, you've known that fires clear sewer here for 10,000s of years. Why did you allow people to build homes here? I mean, I'm just like, it's so stupid, But what else you want to talk about, Isaac?
I got a question for you, Matt. You
Yes.
were talking earlier about making a new comic, and sometimes it can take anywhere between 1 and 10 years. Why does it take that long?
For me, because I'm neurotic.
So is it just years of thinking and rewriting and
No, the 10 years, there's no writing. The first 7 or 8 years are just me thinking about weird shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like these kernels of ideas that jump in the back. I'll give you an example, and I think I gave this pitch to someone earlier today, and if I'm retelling you, did someone hear my untitled DNA thing? Was that you?
I did.
You did? Okay, you too. So I'm going to tell it again, all right? Is mine?
Yeah.
No, about 6 months ago, I read this thing in a science journal that talked about how you can write, you can actually record like on a hard drive, like you can record information on DNA. Okay, that's pretty cool. And so I started thinking about that, and I'm like, what do you do with that? And then I started thinking about junk DNA, and I'm like, okay, so 75–80% of our DNA is supposedly junk. They don't know what it's for. What if 10 million years ago there was this other species that wrote everything on our DNA, and it's just been there for 10 million years and no one knows how to read it? And so some guy figures out how to uncover it and starts reading this stuff and realizes there's all these bioschematics of all these crazy creatures, Nephilim, demons, giants, all this stuff that we've read about in mythology. And it's not about the creation of these things, but it's the idea, sort of an upheaval of our Judeo-Christian mythology and everything we've ever believed. We suddenly realize is all bullshit. And what do you do? Sort of that realization that everything we've ever thought we knew was wrong. And it was one of my favorite parts of the book Childhood Zen. Many of you read that? Arthur C. Clarke's book Childhood Zen?
I haven't read it, but I actually watched the sci-fi series.
I didn't watch it. Is it good?
I thought it was actually really good.
Really? The novel itself is 100 pages long. It'll take you less than an hour to read it, because it's actually, they're short pages. It's one of the best short, I call it a short story. It's not even really a novel, but it's, the idea of it is these overlords show up in these giant ships, and he wrote it in the 50s, so the Independence Day ripped it off. And these giant, circular ships sort of show up and just hover over the world, and they don't say anything to anyone for like 10 years. And then after 10 years they've been there, they reach out to communication, and then the overlords is what they're called. They come down and they start communicating with humans, and they basically reveal that they've been recording Earth history for the last 25,000 years, and they release all the video to everyone on the Earth. And everyone realizes that everything we ever thought about history, religion, all these religious figures is all kind of blown out of proportion, because now they have the long videos they can watch, and it just sort of changed the world overnight, and I'm fascinated by that, and so that's kind of sort of the idea. It's kind of a combination of that with the sort of the sci-fi version of it, and I don't have it quite figured out yet, so I'm just saying, there's an idea. See, that's developing comic ideas or ideas in general. No one wants to see another version of Batman.
Yeah.
I mean, I can look at 10 characters at DC, I can look at 10 characters at Marvel, I can look at half a dozen, probably 50 characters that have been done by independent comics over the last 40 years. There's Batman. I mean, there's so many of them. So it's like, we don't need more of that, So try to do something different. And this is why I always tell people, when you want to write what you want to learn about. Everyone says write what you know, which is a good idea, but write what you know, and it gets boring very quickly. I always try to write things about stuff I don't know about, because then the research for me is fun. I go out and I research it, and I find scientists I can talk to, and people I can interview. And you'd be surprised how many leaders of the field, of any field in the world, will talk to you. You know, the two of the guys, some Vintner and another guy, were on the Human Genome Project that mapped the genome. It took them 12 years and like $6 billion that you can now go on 23andme.com and get done for $100. That's what you can map your DNA. You know, you can find out how long you're probably going to live, what you're likely to die of. You can find out your genetic history. You can all do this because these two guys spent, you know, all this money and this time mapping out our DNA. And it's interesting how that process. It's also why, you know, the toilet on the space shuttle costs $10 million. It's not the toilet. It's the research and development, everything it took to get to that point. You know, the $6 billion it takes to map the genome for $100 now. Someone had to pay that money. Fortunately for them, it was the government. You know, that's just for me. It's educational and entertaining. I preach about this too much, but our country is about to hit a wall. Do you know what the #1 profession in the United States is right now? The most that employs the most people, driving. We're 20 years from driverless cars, completely taking over everything. So that's you know. There are 20 million people in this country that write code of some kind, front-end web development, back-end web development. Most of these people make 80 to 150,000 a year. It's a top-tier field. We're about 15 years from machines being able to do it without them. So, look, I mean, there's massive upheaval coming in the world with machine intelligence, artificial intelligence, and no one really thinks about these things. You know, what are these 10 million Uber people going to do? You know, I mean, no one's retraining. So for me, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math is the future. I have a 15-year-old and 14-year-old son who wants to play football, and I'm like, okay. The other one wants to be a roboticist, so I'm like, great. If you can't do that, you can repair them, because someone's still going to need to repair these fuckers until they figure out how to repair themselves. So that's, you know, that's your lifetime. Your son's lifetime. We'll have to figure out what next to do. But anyway, I didn't mean to get myself off.
Hey, how many years away are we from robots making comics?
Did you read about that thing I got sucked into, the UCLA study?
No.
I went to UCLA for 9 years, and I am inside a bit of the academia there, and I got asked to participate in an AI study where they sent me 4 stories, and they said that some of them were written by a computer. And what I discovered, that this was not a test for that. It was a test to find out how paranoid everyone is about this, because none of them written by computers, because we're not there yet. And but I didn't know that. You know, I'm not actively involved in artificial intelligence, so there are people right now that are breaking down stories. Because if you look at stories, how many of you have heard of the 3-act structure of a film?
Yeah, sure.
You know, I mean, there are structural elements. You know, I mean, if you look at the 3-act structure, it says on page 10 of your screenplay, you need to have an inciting incident. On page 18, you need to introduce your mentor figure. You know, at page 30, you need to have the first act twist, which carries you through the second act, the journey. The second act is longer. Midpoint is the main character's lowest point in the storyline. You lead up to the crisis, which takes you to the third act, which ends the story in the denouement. These are very specific, calculable things. You can. There's no reason that a computer can do it. So think about that. I mean, that's a little frightening. Plus, you can take the 9 freaking trillion stories that are already being recycled all the time. You know, this is the thing that drives me nuts about comics a little bit is, you know, you go pick up 500 issues of Batman and read them. Well, I'm not saying you should do that, but I'm just saying, if you, even 100 issues, get 100 issues from different eras and read them in 10-issue blocks, and they're all the same story. Part of that is editorial, and it's branding, and it's intentional, you know, but that stuff drives me nuts. You know, I always want to read something new. It's why in, like in Think Tank and then Tide and Postal, when we kill people, they stay dead. That's more interesting to me. You know, it's like, okay, how does that affect people, you know? And obviously we don't have giant movie franchises to protect on these yet.
Yeah.
And things may change. Sorry.
Well, Matt, on a related note, here's a question. So you were one of the guys at the beginning of the Image,
yeah.
Right? So you saw comics at their high point, you saw Image at a low point, and now you're at the forefront of this resurgence of Image comics, right? So where are comics heading? Where are things going to be in 5 years?
I have no idea. Here's what I'll say. I was asked, I did an interview this morning where people said, what do you see the future entertainment? I'm like, you know, I kind of don't care, because I'm a storyteller, and you're a storyteller. Mm-hmm. And we're not technology people, really. Mm-hmm. And so what we do has always been done, from the guy that was telling the stories of the fires 10 million years ago, to the guy in the Stone Ages that was drawing paintings on the walls. We're telling stories. whatever the distribution medium is, virtual reality, inside your head, someone needs to tell these stories, at least in our lifetime, you know, so I'm not terribly worried about it, because everyone said digital was going to kill print comics. Print comics sell better now than they did when digital started. So guess what, you naysayers, fuck off. I just constantly hear this stuff about, oh, comics are going to end, you know, the direct market's going to collapse, and so many of these predictions are just wrong. And I don't make these kind of predictions. I like all these predictions I'm making about AI. This is based on real technology that's happening. You know, it's demonstrable. Other people will guess at shit, and it always kind of drives me nuts. The self-proclaimed experts on things are always fascinating to me. Like there's the one word I hate more than any word on the planet is the word transmedia. You guys ever heard this word? These guys start saying, oh, we're developing a transmedia property. It's good for film and TV and video games, and it's going to be a comic, it's going to be this. I'm like, fuck off. It's just 20 years ago we called it multimedia. Oh, we're developing something for multimedia. Ooh. You know, and so these guys in the last 5 or 8 years, whatever, came up with this new word for the same thing that's always been around. Stuff is developed for different media. I mean, Postal I developed as a TV show. It was intentionally developed as a TV pitch. I never took it out because my managers and agents told me we should do this as a comic first. So I'm like, all right. And that's when I brought Brian in. And we started developing it out. I don't know.
It's a lot like Lost. My favorite episodes of Lost. If you guys are fans of that, the best part of Lost, I think you guys will agree with me, is just going and seeing the backstories or following a character for an episode and seeing what brought them to the mysterious island. And Postal is a lot like that for me, because here's a town full of criminals. It's kind of like our Lost Island. And here's the backstory of whatever character. Trade 2 in particular, every issue feels like a TV episode, and we're following one character.
Right.
Yeah, so when I got the scripts from you and Brian, I didn't know that there was TV stuff on deck. So one of the things I thought of was, oh, this feels like a TV show. This is a very cool episode of a Postal TV show.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key to TV. It's key to comics. It's key to anything, really. You have to have interesting characters. I mean, I think we're in a weird post-plot development, especially in Hollywood. I call it a post-plot development time because pick the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. How many of you seen it? Everyone's seen it? Okay. I did my own little personal survey recently, well, a year ago. That was been a couple years now, right? Where I asked people what the movie was about. And all I would get back from people is, oh, it had this raccoon, and it was cool, and you know, Chris Pratt's all buff now, and he's out doing this thing, and there were all these character bits. None of it was the plot of the story, you know, and nothing was about the Infinity Gems, the Gauntlet, the blue guys, and the other guys, and this crap, and no one knew what the story was. They didn't know. And I challenge you to do that yourself. I mean, it's fascinating to me. There are a lot of movies, but see, that's forgivable if people like the characters now. So all you gotta do is create characters that people like. And that's why I always tell development for new characters and new writers, write a single character, don't write a cast. Writing an ensemble cast is very hard. You know, even this is Mark, actually, that book has always been to me Laura's book.
Yeah.
I've always seen Laura as the main character.
Laura's kind of taken over the book.
Yeah. That was always sort of the intent.
Well, you know, Bart Simpson was the star of The Simpsons until people started to like Homer more. Yeah, and took over. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's kind of a great thing about stories is that you started somewhere and then it grows and it becomes its own thing. You know, that cliche, the characters write themselves, partially true.
No, and that's where the collaborative nature. I don't know if you guys have read Think Tank, but there's a character in the first couple arcs called the General, which is this woman, and she's kind of an interesting character. I originally wrote that as a man, and Rasan just withdrew her as a woman because he wanted to increase the diversity of the cast. And I'm like, okay, who cares? I didn't care. And then that was very, I think it was the first issue that happened. And then very quickly, what I discovered was, hey, this character is really interesting because she's an older woman. Part of the reason why she is who she is, she's kind of bitter, is because she grew up in the Air Force when it wasn't as friendly to women. You know, when you're the only woman in an Air Force full of guys and you're getting mistreated, you have to be this hard ass to get ahead. She's fought her way to the top of the chain, and it's kind of made her who she is. And she's super smart. She's in effect David Lauren, but a female, 30 years older. And that created that character and who she is. And that, to me, was the most interesting part. And now I couldn't imagine that character not being who she is. So it's interesting to me sometimes how those characters do write themselves. So, but are we running out of time? I mean, we can sit here and bullshit stories. Oh, we have a few minutes. Any other questions you guys have? Anything? Want to hear about anything?
First off, I want to congratulate you on your recent nuptials.
Oh, thank you.
And second off, at what point did you decide, like for each issue that they should, or each title that they should cross over to the other?
That happened in the Tithe. When I was doing the second volume of the Tithe, if you guys don't know the Tithe, that's my heist story. It's about a group of hackers that work together. Actually, it's one hacker that works together to steal money from mega churches and give it to charity. It's kind of a modern day Robin Hood. In the second arc of that one, I was trying to figure out what to do. Because the Tithe was initially only going to be a fortune. That one was never intended to be more than a fortune thing. It was going to be something that Rasad and I did between Think Tank arcs, because he got tired of drawing helicopters and wanted to do something else. So that's why that exists. And then when the Tithe did as well as it did, we did the second arc. And in the second arc, it just made sense. Samaritan was a hacker. The Jimmy character was a hacker. They would live in the same world as Dr. David Lauren, who's basically a hacker. And he's the best of the hackers, so he can help them. You know, and he's in the military on the inside, developing a quantum ecology program. And that was kind of a throwaway thing. And then we did a few more things like that. And then at the end of the second volume, where we had like the senator that was the bad guy, and the guy that was working with him was kind of his hatchet man, that's when we decided at the end of that to throw that character into Eden. Like he got away. So Eden's Fall, which comes out in August, it's a 3-issue storyline. It's been very organically done. And not one of these giant Civil War, you have to buy $900, $2,000 worth of issues. This is 3 books, that's it. It's a self-contained story. If you read the books, you don't want to read that, you don't have to. But the idea of it is, it's those characters working together to try to get this guy out. And there's a pretty major character that does die. And like I said, in our world, these characters, they die, they stayed in it. But it just made it Tithe, Think Tank, and Postal. They take place in the real world. There's nothing supernatural, there's nothing superheroic, no insanity that couldn't happen. So why not put them in the same world? That was kind of the thought process. Initially, it was just a nod, and then it became kind of a thing. So I always loved that. I love that in the forced crossovers are kind of annoying to me. There was an issue of Spider-Man I remember reading when I was a kid, and Spider-Man was swinging and he landed on a roof, and Daredevil was standing on the corner, and Spider-Man goes, "Daredevil, what's up?" He's like, "I'm busy." He jumps down, and then it was just a nod to that series, and it said, "See what Daredevil was doing in Daredevil number 12," or something like that. I just thought that was cool. It was like, or you're going through like another book, and you see like Batman, you see on the Daily Planet, there's an article about Superman. You know, I mean, just little nods about the shared universe. It's much easier to do when you have 2 or 3 books than it is when you have the new 52.
Right.
So, but does that answer that question?
Perfectly.
So, any other questions? Bueller?
Are there ever times when you're just sketching and you're not necessarily just coming up with a character and it just kind of happens? And you're like, oh, this character looks really interesting, could have a good story?
Yeah, actually, very much so. Every once in a while, I'll pitch something to Brian, like, "Oh, that background guy. What if we made his story something?" And he's like a guy who owned a bagel store, whatever, you know. So I'll have a lot of that. And you know, Brian is so great because he's very receptive to all of that stuff. So you know, there's a storyline that I've had an idea for that I kind of bring up to Brian after, you know, every arc. And so there's a little bit of that. I'd like to do more of Magnum's backstory. So I'm always kind of like throwing ideas at him and kind of mentioning things off the cuff. So a little bit here and there. You know, I'm not really, the thing about storytelling is that for me, I want to be as economical as possible. And that's, a lot of that is just a timing thing, but a lot of it is also just like the best artists, like Alex Toth or John Romita Jr. I mean, these are guys that are very economical. They're drawing only what you need to see because they want the story to flow, you know? The guys that are doing a lot of background stuff, like, I don't know, like me, that's just showing off at best, you know? It's really the guys that want to do the most effective storytellers are doing what you need to see, and the story moves perfectly, and there's a flow, and it's natural, and you're not getting lost with, oh, that guy with the interesting hat, you know? So the better I get with Postal, ironically, the less I do of that stuff. Although when it does happen, it is cool, and we are talking about it, so yeah.
No, there's a lot of that. I mean, artists throw characters in the background all the time, various things, and there's kind of throwaway whatever standalones. And then when we're looking at stories, a lot of times when I'm trying to do another arc of a comic, like when I did Tide 2, I went back and reread Tide 1. I'm like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. You know, I mentioned that Dwayne had daughters, and I didn't do anything with them in the first arc. So I'm like, oh, I'll do something with them in the second arc. You know, and it's just reviewing what you've said. I mean, there are sometimes when you write yourself into a corner, it's like. Ironically, one of the best-selling books I've ever done was the Aphrodite 99 Generation series. It sold better than almost anything else I've done. That was the hardest book for me to write. I kept writing myself into corners because it was such a complicated, with so many characters involved, and it was just not. It was not a natural book for me to write. And so every single time I would write one of those, I'd have to go back and reread all of them, and then I would be like, oh, fuck, I didn't do this. I got to do this, and I would have to come up with all these things. And Cedric is an artist that. Doesn't always follow plots, you know, and so he would change some stuff around, and because I'm on the business side, I do our finance, I do our legal, I'm doing all the film and TV stuff, and I've got 2 kids, I got a wife, so I'm a busy guy, so I don't always pay as close of attention to that stuff as I should. So I'm like, oh, I gotta write this script in 3 fucking days, and here's the art. Oh shit, you know, and that's happened to me a few times. So, but that's my own fault. But yeah.
Now you said that you write about what you want to learn about.
Yeah.
What were you wanting to learn about with Aphrodite 9?
Well, that's a case where there was nothing I learned about. You know, I mean, and that was one of the hardest books. No, the hardest book I've ever had to write was Tales of Honor. Writing over adapting a novel was very hard. And I worked on the Power Rangers for 2 years, and that wasn't easy for me either. And I wrote 18 episodes of Space Patrol Delta and Magic Rangers, highbrow stuff. And that's a whole other thing. It's weird to me when there are people that show up with a bunch of DVDs of Power Rangers for me to sign, and I'm always kind of weirded out by that. There's always one, you know. Or someone will come up with the Darkness video game deep jacket and want me to sign that, but they don't read any comics. I'm always like, all right. Yeah, I think, you know, those were hard. Some stuff is easy. Dictating sex is pretty easy for me to write. It takes me about a week to write a book. You know, and I write a book a week, and it's about a 3-day process where I shift over to writing a different book. And a lot of that is mental. It's all in my head because all these characters are really different. You know, so like Postal now, I couldn't write. I couldn't write Lady Pendragon anymore either because I'm not in that headspace. I tried to revive Lady Pendragon because a lot of people that book. This first thing, if you don't know that book, it's the first comic I ever wrote. It was in 1995, I was obsessed with Arthurian legend. I went to England and spent all this time. It was pre-internet. You know, I spent 2 years researching that book in person and doing all this crazy stuff, tracking down all these old books because there was no internet. Now I can do all that in like 2 weeks. Yeah, and that was it was a crazy process. But all that stuff's out of my head. You know, how many of you remember what you studied in calculus or whatever? You know, I don't remember most of that. You don't use it. You know, so you don't use it, you don't need it. So all the intricacies of those characters, I don't know that I could write right now. So anyway, any final thoughts, words, or anything?
Well, I've got plenty, but we have one-on-ones
go ahead.
coming up.
Yeah.
Let's save something for those.
Oh, actually, we're out of time. So, you want one more, or are you good?
No, I was just gonna say, you guys are doing some awesome work with the publication, and we've enjoyed almost every title you've been putting out.
Thank you.
So
We actually have a tagline when we review
Yeah.
Matt Hawkins'
Oh,
book.
Yeah.
Well, guys, do me a favor, spread the word. I know you guys do, and I appreciate it. But the thing is everyone that I get to read these books likes them, but most people won't pick them up because they're not Marvel DC, you know. And I keep struggling with the thing because you know Sylvester's working on a DC thing now, and I've been for a while talking about how I should go write some Marvel and DC stuff, and I've had some opportunities I've actually turned down, and I sometimes I regret it, but I'm just like. Doing work for hire stuff just doesn't sit right with me because if we get this TV show made and on the air, hey, buy me a new house. You know, I mean, that's if I go write stuff for Marvel and they go make a movie out of it, I get jack shit. You know, so if I'm going to play lottery with character creation development, I'd rather play with stuff I own. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but we're at booth 2233.
2200. We moved.
No, yeah, it was
Okay.
originally 700 and something.
Got
We're 2233 if you don't know where we're at. I think I've seen all you down there. But come by, we have some free comics, and I'd love to talk to you more. I think we'll be down there at 6, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be down there in half an hour. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming.